Good morning, dear student. This part of the video is the third part for chapter number 1, the living world. In the previous class, we have talked about nomenclature, why we need nomenclature, and for nomenclature, we have first of all we have to identify the organism, and for identification, after identification, we have to classify certain type of organism. So there is a basic kind of system that we have to follow. Like for example, in order to know the variety of organisms present in our planet, first of all we have to name them. That comes under nomenclature. And then secondly, we have to, in order to name them, first of all we have to know, we have to identify what plant or animal is that. And after identifying that particular organism, we have to classify it so that it will become easier for us to understand all the living organisms and their relationship with us. So during that we have studied about a very new term which is called taxa. So previously I have told you about taxa. What is taxa? Well, taxa is nothing but it is a scientific term for categories. So how we identified organism is by dividing on them based on a certain category. So this category, similar categories, this category is called taxa, and therefore taxa is a scientific term of those similar categories that we use to identify an organism. So this taxa is a very new term. Therefore, we have to know about it before we go further into taxonomy and then into taxonomical hierarchy, and then we go further into taxon. So taxa is nothing but a scientific term for those similar category that are based for identifying an organism. So since there are huge number of organisms are present in them, therefore we try to select similarities between them, and by selecting those similarities we put them into a category, and those categories nothing but taxa. And each and every category represents a taxa. So each and every categories will represent a taxa. Taxa is also present at different level. So every taxa is present in a different level. At different level of our classification, taxa is always present. So from taxa comes the word taxonomy. So what is taxonomy? Taxonomy is nothing but it is a classification of living organisms into different taxa based on their characteristics. So what is taxonomy? Taxonomy is nothing but it is classification, that is dividing or grouping the organism. Classification is nothing but when we try to group an organism based on the similar characters. So this classification of living organism into different taxa based on their characteristics. So taxonomy is classification of living organism based on different taxa based on their characteristics. And when we talk about taxonomy, then we have to know a slight idea, or we have to study another term called systematics. So in the future or during the course of study, we will use taxonomy and systemic as a synonym, because more or less they have the same meaning. So they are synonym, that is they have the same meaning. So systematic is nothing but the branch of science. It is a branch of science where we study or we deals in the arrangement and relationship among organisms. So systematics is nothing but it is a branch of science that deals with the arrangement of organism and their relationship among them. So it is nothing but a branch of science that deals with how we arrange the organism and where we try to understand the relationship between the organisms. So this is about systematic, and systematics and taxonomy are a synonym. We use systematic and synonym as a word that goes along together. They are synonyms. So you can either use taxonomy or either you can use systematic. So both will give you the more or less the similar meaning or similar definition. So as we go further into taxon and classification and then nomenclature of organism, it became very clear to us that we have to have a standard form of arrangement, a standardized form of arrangement where these organisms can be grouped and can be studied easily. So in order to make these organisms to be studied easily and more understandable, it is very important to know the meaning of certain words. So the first one that we will discuss under taxonomy or under systematic taxonomical hierarchy. The word hierarchy means when there is a arrangement in different levels. So a taxonomical hierarchy is made up of different levels. It is made up of different levels. So when I say different level, it means that in a taxonomical hierarchy, you will have different category, you will have different taxon, and those different hierarchy will represent the way animals are classified. So in taxonomical hierarchy, it is made up of different levels. Then the next is taxonomic category. So taxonomic category is nothing but a part of overall taxonomy. Part of overall arrangement. So taxonomic category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement. So what is taxonomic category? Taxonomic category is nothing but a part of overall taxonomic arrangement. So in a taxonomic arrangement, this category will represent a part of the taxonomic hierarchy. Alright, now we have taxonomic hierarchy. In taxonomic hierarchy, what is taxonomic hierarchy? Well, taxonomic hierarchy is nothing. Taxonomic characters together constitute a taxonomic hierarchy. Taxonomic categories together constitute a taxonomic So taxonomic hierarchy is nothing but we have taxonomic character, and many taxonomic character will constitute a taxonomic hierarchy. So as we go further, taxonomic character, taxonomic hierarchy, we came across a word called taxon. Taxon is the singular of taxa. Taxa is the plural form and taxon is nothing but the singular. And as we know that what is taxon? Taxon is nothing but it is a scientific term for those category in which we base organism to be divided. So taxon is singular and taxa is plural. Its taxonomic character. Its taxonomic character represents a unit of classification. So this taxon is a unit of classification and it is termed as rank or taxa. So taxa is nothing but it is a taxonomic character representing a unit of classification termed as taxon or rank. Alright, so taxa is a scientific term for all those base category or all those base character, and taxon is a singular form of taxa, and taxon is also nothing but it is the unit of classification. This unit of classification, it is also called the rank or it can be also called taxon. So in a taxonomic hierarchy, we will have group. Group is similar to category, which is also similar to rank or taxon. So in a taxonomic hierarchy, you will have group, which can be category, or it can also be rank, or it can also be taxon. So this is about taxonomical hierarchy, and what we have learned is that we have learned about taxon being the singular form of taxa, and taxa is nothing but the scientific term which is used for category. Similar organisms are grouped together into one taxa and into one category called taxa, and taxa is nothing but a scientific term of this similar organism grouped together in a category. Alright, and now the next thing is that each rank or taxa in fact represents a unit of classification. So what is taxa or taxon? It is nothing but a unit of classification. So the unit of classification is represented by rank or taxa. So that is about taxa and taxonomical hierarchy. Now let us try to understand more about hierarchical classification. Hierarchical classification. So in order to understand this hierarchical classification, let's take an example. So what happens is that while we try to classify organism, most of the time what we do is that we try to group organism into those similar characters, those characters which are similar to each other. We try to select that one. and then we try to classify. So let's have a look at this example where you have humans. Let's consider about humans. Human belongs to the group of animals called mammals. Why? Because mammals are the group of organisms which give birth to young ones, which have mammary glands. So these are the common characteristics that humans show. So therefore, humans are grouped into mammals, and these mammals belongs to a group of organisms. They are not plants, so they are animals. All right. Let's say vertebrate. These mammals belong to a group of organisms which have vertebrae, which have the backbone. So we comes under vertebrate, and then this vertebrate organism comes under they are not plants, they are animals. So animal, vertebrate, and mammals and humans. So this group of organisms called the human belong to this category. So at different level, a different level of classification is created, or in order to classify organism in a hierarchical classification, we have different level has been created in order to classify the organism. So that is hierarchical classification. So there is a step-by-step classification of organism based on their similarity. So what is hierarchical classification? The hierarchical classification is nothing but when you try to classify animal into a different level. So classification of organism into different level based on their similar character is nothing but hierarchical classification. Hierarchical classification is a standard level that has been created. Okay, the hierarchical classification is created for the purpose of classification so that it will become easy. Alright, so during the classification of animal, there are this hierarchical classification. These are the hierarchical classification. We have kingdom. Okay, the top level in the hierarchical classification is kingdom. That is whether the organism belongs to plant or belongs to animal. Then you have phylum, under phylum, or division. So here the phylum is used for animals. Okay, phylum, the hierarchical classification of phylum or the word phylum is used for animal, and division is used for plant. When you try to classify plant, you will use plant, and then you have class. Alright, then class you have family, order you have family, you have genus, and in the end it is species. So this is a hierarchical classification, that is kingdom. First of all, you will divide the organism whether it is plant or animal. So kingdom Animalia, kingdom Plantae. And then you will classify them into phylum, like phylum for animals and division for plant. You are going to use this phylum, and division is separate for plants and animals. And then you have class. Under class you will have similar organisms which have similar class, and order, family, genus, and species represent the last level in a hierarchical classification. So species is nothing but the last level in a hierarchical classification. Like let's take an example. In the kingdom Plantae, when you talk about kingdom plants or the kingdom Plantae, it will include all the plant, whether they are growing in water, whether they grow in desert, whether they grow in tropical rainforest, or whatever, in any place where they grow, they are represented in the kingdom Plantae. Alright, and then you have phylum. You are going to divide the plant based on their body structure, whether they have simple organization or whether they have complex organization. So you will use the word division, alright. And after that, class. So based on the similarity in a hierarchical classification, as you go up from species to kingdom, the similarity of character decreases. Alright. So when you go up from a hierarchical classification, when you go up from species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, or division and kingdom, the similarity of character decreases. So the number of similar character will become lesser and lesser when you go from below to the top of the hierarchical classification. And in the kingdom, like let's take an example, we have kingdom has phylum or division. Alright, this phylum or division will have many families, right? Many class. It will have many class, and this class will have many orders. Alright, and order will have many families, and each family will have many genus, and each genus will have many species. So this under a kingdom you will have like the phylum, and the phylum or the division will have many class. A single class will have many orders. A single order will have many families, and a single family will have many genus, and a single genus will have many species. So the similarity of character will be more in species compared to the similarity of character present in the example of this tree genus. So likewise, when you go up from smaller to the bigger one, to the bigger hierarchical classification, or to the top level of classification, the similarity of character decreases. Alright, so those animals belonging to same species or species which they will have more similar character to those that are present under the same genus. So this is the meaning of when we say that when you go up in hierarchical classification, similarity of character decreases. That's what we are referring here. Alright, so the similarity between different organisms decreases as you go up from hierarchical classification, starting from species to kingdom. Alright, so let's get to the next one. This is a bit confusing one. So let's try to understand the hierarchical classification. In order to understand this hierarchical classification, let us take a very good example. We are not going to consider any other organism, but we are going to consider the human. Alright, so let's take an example of human. You can see that between humans, among siblings, among your brothers and sisters, there is more similarity between your brother and your sister than your friends. So let us consider that example in order to understand more about the hierarchical classification. Alright, so you have your parents. Alright, parent, let's take as A, your parents. Alright, your parent consists of one male and one female. Right, they have offspring. Alright, we have parent A, and then you have 1, 2 offspring. You see your brothers, and among your siblings, the similarity or the physical similarity will be more, and there will be also more similarity with your parents. Alright, compared to the friends which are not related to you. If you are related by blood, you can see that there is a close resemblance between the siblings and also with the parents, between the sibling and also between the parents. So let's take example, this offspring A and B, they also get married. Alright, it also get married, and it has 3 and 4 as the offspring. Alright, so they are the first cousin. Alright, this number 1 also, the offspring number 1 also got married. Alright, and then in case of human, when the grandparent and the similarity between the grandchildren will also be less compared to the immediate children, alright, immediate offspring. Therefore, similarly, like this in the hierarchical classification, when you go up from species to the kingdom, the similarity of character between the organism decreases. So as we go up from in the hierarchical classification, similarity decreases. Organism with the same species will be more similar than organism of the genus, and organism, when you compare the organism present in the species to the organism present in the genus, though they are in the same genus, the similarity will be lesser. So this is about hierarchical classification. Now let us try to analyze each and every hierarchy that is present in the classification. So in the taxonomic hierarchy, you have different level. So let's start with the last level, that is the species. So in the previous lecture also I have told you that an organism belonging to the same species will have more number of similar character. So individuals, organisms with fundamental similarities are considered as a species. So see, a species is a group of organisms that have more similar character when you compare to the upper level, that is genus or generic. Alright, so species is, let us try to understand species by looking at this example. Mangifera indica. In the previous video also we have discussed about Mangifera indica, which is mango. The botanical name of mango is Mangifera indica, and this Mangifera is the genus name, and the species indica is a species or specific epithet. That was what we have discussed in the previous class. So this example, like Mangifera indica, which represent mango. Okay, and then let's take another example, Solanum tuberosum, which is potato. So what is Solanum tuberosum? Solanum tuberosum is nothing but potato. Mangifera indica is mango. Solanum tuberosum is potato. And then let's take an example for lion. Panthera. Sorry, Panthera leo is nothing but lion. Alright, so let us consider this example. All the names in here, like indica, tuberosum, leo, they represent, what does they represent? They represent specific or species. Alright, so it is a group of organisms. It represents the species, and we all know that first represent the genus or the generic name, and each so this genus, the generic name, they represent a higher taxon. Okay, they represent a higher taxon or category. So we are not going to consider the genus name, we are going to consider the specific epithet or species, which is indica, tuberosum, leo. So this represents that the species indica is a group of mango which are very much similar to each other. Alright, so this is the species name, and you will have another species like Solanum nigrum. Alright, so the species is nigrum. Though they belong to the same genus, tuberosum and nigrum will have difference in their character. There will be some difference in their character. So this indica, tuberosum, leo represents the species. Alright, and species is the lowest level in a hierarchical classification. So what is species? Species is the lowest level in a hierarchical classification. We are going to consider the next level, which is genus. Alright, the first name in a scientific name or in a botanical or a zoological name represents a higher taxon or category. This Mangifera, Solanum, Panthera, they represent the genus, order, generic name. Alright, so Mangifera, Solanum, Panthera, they comes under the generic name, and all those organisms that has Mangifera, Solanum, Panthera, they will have similar character, but their similar character will be lesser compared to the species of indica, tuberosum and leo. Alright, so all the organisms, when I say Panthera, leo, all the lions will be included, but when I say Panthera without leo, then Panthera is a name for tiger also. Alright, it is a genus name. The genus name of tiger is also Panthera. You write as Panthera tigris, which is the scientific name of tiger. You can see that there is a similarity between tiger and lion. However, the similarity between the tiger and lion is up to genus only. There are certain differences as well. So this is about genus or the generic name, right? So when we consider Panthera leo and Panthera tigris, both belongs to the same genus because they have similarity. However, their similarity is limited to a certain character only. They don't have every character being similar. But when you consider the lion or when you consider a tiger, all tiger will have the same character, all lion will have the same character. So they have the same species as leo and they have the same species as tigris. However, the genus, though they comes under the generic name Panthera, both lion and tiger, we know that there are certain difference. So in a genera has, what does genera or genus has? It has closely related, how do you say? We can say that genus we say that genus have closely related, or genus are aggregate of closely related species. So when the species are closely related, it will represent a genus. So what is genus? Genus is nothing but it is a aggregate of closely related species. So when species are closely related to each other, they comes under genus. Alright, so now all species, like all, when you say Panthera leo, all tiger, all lion will belong to same species, all tiger will belong to same species of tigris, and all lion to leo. But when we say Panthera, then it will have aggregate of closely related species. So they are going to be related closely, but then they are not exactly copy of each other. Alright, so the lion and tiger, though they have similarity, they are considered to be genus because they have an aggregate of closely related species. So you can see that both tiger and lion, they are four-footed. Alright, so that's how we understand by genus, and that's how we understand by species. Understand? So in case of tiger, lion, and then we also has another example like leopard leopardos, which stands for leopard. Okay. So Panthera tigris is for tiger. P. pardus is for leopard. P. leo is for lion. So this is how you understand by genus. And we have another genus in the group. So in this group we have another genus called the Felis. Felis is a group of genus that represents or that include cats. Alright. Okay, so for cats it is Felis, but they belong to the same family. They are going to belong to the same family. We can see that there is some similarity between lion, tiger, cat and leopard, but they belong to same family, but they belong to same genus. So the next category is family, or the next taxon that we will study is family. Alright, when I say let's keep here like this: species, genus, closely related. Alright, closely related species. Alright. And species is all those organisms that have the same morphological similarity. Same morphology. Or species, when we talk about species, we can say that species is a group of organisms which are able to interbreed among themselves. Interbreed. Okay, interbreed means they are able to produce progeny through the process of reproduction. Right? Species are a group of organisms which are able to interbreed among themselves. Alright? They are able to reproduce among themselves. And species is a level of hierarchical classification. It is also a category. It is also a taxon or a taxa. And this species includes animals which are able to interbreed among themselves. Because a cow will always interbreed with a cow, with another cow or an ox, right? A tiger with a tigress, alright? A cat and a tiger will not be able to interbreed, will not be able to undergo the process of reproduction. They will not produce a progeny. So species are a group of organisms which are able to interbreed, which are fertile for each other, which are able to produce their own offspring. And when you have genus, in case of genus, these are closely aggregate of closely related species, and those organisms in a genus, they will not be able to interbreed. Alright, they cannot interbreed among themselves. And the next level is family. And family will have closely related genus. So in the previous example, when we are talking about the Panthera genus Panthera, we know about Leo being the lion, P. tigris being the tiger, right? And then you have another genus called Felis, that is for the cats. This genus Felis includes cats, alright? So this genus, okay, this genus, they comes under closely related. They are closely related genus are bring together under family. Okay, so they will have similar character, but their similar character is lesser when you compare when you compare among the similarity in a genus. Alright, so family is nothing but it is a group of closely related genus. So what is the family taxon in a hierarchy? In a taxonomical hierarchy, the family taxon is nothing but it comprises of group of closely related genus. So closely related genus, but they will have lesser similarity when you compare with genus. So the similarity between the organism in the family is less compared when you compare to the genus. Understand? So when I say when we take this, we can also take an example. Alright? The example of this tiger, leopard and cat, they belong to the family called all these genus, this aggregate of genus Panthera, Felis, alright? They comes under the family called Felidae. Alright, so you're going to pronounce it as Felidae. So when you look at cow, dog, lion, tiger, leopard, you can see that they do have some similarity. Alright, they do have some similarity, but they do not represent, they are not interbreedable to each other. They cannot produce fertile offspring when they are interbreed in nature. They cannot interbreed in nature, so though they have some similar character. So this Panthera and the Felis, they comes under the family Felidae, and this Felidae also have two different another families also present when we consider this tiger and lion group of organism. What is that? That is Canidae. So please look at the last word of the family. A family name will always end by DAE. Alright. Canidae or AE is the ending word in a family. Like Solanaceae. Understand, when you consider about plants, and you will have all those Solanum tuberosum, Solanum nigra, they all belongs to a family of Solanaceae. Alright, and this Solanaceae family also have another family. Alright. There are different families, like for example, this family of Solanaceae will have Solanum. It will also have Datura. Alright. Okay, these are genus. Solanaceae is a family, and it also have another family which is Petunia. Alright, so the family Felidae have Felidae and Canidae as a two type of family, and all the genus will come under these two family, and then the Solanaceae family will have genus Solanum, genus Datura, and genus Petunia. So these are the genus, this is a family. So when you compare the similarity of character between Solanum, Datura, Petunia and Solanaceae, there will be lesser, but the similarity of character among this genus will be more as compared to family Solanaceae. Understand? So this is about family, and you among this the family, the cat family, you have two families, Felidae and Canidae. So the last two words represents the family. You can easily identify the name of the family by looking at the last two words. A family will always ends with AE. Alright, the names in the family ends with AE. Though there are different names for genus, however, in case of family, they always ends with So this is the third hierarchical classification. Alright, the third hierarchical classification in the taxonomy hierarchy. This family is the third one. Right? So next class we will discuss about